So when we're done filming, the first thing I need you to do is show me how to tie that bow tie. It's pretty awesome. But Greg, first, explain who you are to the viewers at home watching right now and exactly what PBA Galleries is and what you guys do.
Hi, my name is Greg Chrysalis. I'm the marketing director here at PBA Galleries, and PBA Galleries is the largest rare book specialty auction house in North America. We've been around since the early 50s, and we've sold everything from a Shakespeare second folio to Stephen King and Harry Potter, besides all the comics that we get.
Do you have a Stephen King right now?
No.
So this is amazing what we've got behind us right now. And this is just a small sample of the auction that you guys have coming up. This is the first time in history that over 40,000 books have been collected in the DC universe. How did PBA Galleries even acquire this collection?
Well, there's a long and interesting story behind that, but I think that the nutshell version is that the collection was built by a British chap named Ian LaVine, who was a music producer in London back in the 70s and the 80s. Very popular, sold 40 million records. Now, Ian was obsessed with DC when he was a kid, and now he had the resources to make his dream come true, to build the world's finest and most complete DC collection. So it took him quite some time to do it, but eventually he amassed it. Over 40,000 comic books, including one copy of every single DC publication from 1934 to 2014.
That's insane. Now, how long have you personally been working on acquiring this collection for the auction?
I first met Ian back in 2015, so it's been 8 years. It's been quite a process. A lot of things to, take care of and a lot of strategizing to do. But we finally got there, and now it's underway.
Do you think, based on the prices of these comics today, is it even possible for somebody to put this collection together today?
A lot of these books there may be 3, 4, 5 copies known to exist. They're essentially one of a kind because they just do not come to market. They go into private collections and they stay there. It could be a generation before some of these books are seen again.
Now, this collection is so epic that it's actually featured in this ginormous book right here. Tell me a little bit about this giant coffee table book.
Okay, well, this book was written by Paul Levitz, who was one of the big brass at DC Comics at one time. It's a massive book put out by Taschen, the world's biggest publisher. And it's a history of DC. So of course, who did they go to but Ian LaVine, who had the complete DC collection, to use his collection as the target for all of the comics that you see reproduced in here. So easily 98% or more of the DC comics you see in this book come from the Ian LaVine collection, which is now the DC Universe collection. And it's just a really impressive, monumental book. It gives you a good sense of the scope and the scale of this collection. I've got to tell you, so I collect old photographs relating to comic books. And so, most of the book are these comic books from the LaVine collection, but we also have a lot of photographs in here that come from my collection. And that was part of what me and Ian kind of bonded over when I first met him in London, is that between the two of us, it encompasses almost the entire history of DC as presented in this book, so it seemed a little serendipitous that we kind of came together to discuss marketing his collection.
Now, even this book is overwhelming. So the fact that there's you guys have 40,000 books in your possession is just mind-blowing to me. So you guys aren't going to be selling all of these at once. You're actually going to be breaking these up into separate auctions. So tell me a little bit about that process.
That's part of what me and Ian, and the fellow who acquired the collection from Ian had to discuss in London. Ian and the owner of the collection at that time wanted to keep the collection complete because, it was a life's work for him. The idea of dispersing the collection to the winds just was very difficult for him to accept. So I, on the other hand, being an auction specialist and a collector, I know that the best way to sell the collection is to kind of carve it up like a goose. These books go here, these go there. The same person who's going to buy Action Comics #1 does not necessarily want, Teen Titans #68, different markets. So I was determined that the collection needed to be separated, and Ian and the owner of the collection weren't really ready for that, so we kind of amicably parted, and the collection went to Sotheby's. Sotheby's did try to sell it as a unit for $10 million, and as I expected, they found that it's just really difficult to find a single buyer who's got the resources in this space to accommodate that many books in one fell swoop.
Now, you've had a number of key issues graded by CGC, so tell me a little bit about this collection that this CGC has designated as the DC Universe collection.
So what we have here, it's a provenance label, Each label says the DC Universe Collection, and that's distinct from a pedigree label. Now, a pedigree label has to do with an original owner collection. You know, some kid bought the books off the newsstands in the 1940s or 50s and kept them, you know, generally in a very good state of preservation for years, and then when they come to the marketplace, they're known as, you know, the Allentown collection or the Mile High collection or whatever it is. In this case, these are book collection that was built up after the fact, not an original owner collection, kind of cobbled together in bits and pieces here and there over the years, like kind of a Frankenstein's monster of comics. It's a wonderful thing. So you don't really see the provenance labels as much. I think it's something people are starting to think in terms of that more and more these days, where you've got one collector who's kind of made his imprint on some collecting category. And in this case, Ian LaVine, I mean, this is something, and it's an accomplishment that will never be rivaled, never be equal. This is indeed the DC Universe Collection.
Matt, it's so good to see you again.
Well, thanks. Great to see you too.
Yeah, it's great to be here back at CGC. Now, can you talk about what it is about this collection that makes it so special that it deserves its own CGC label?
I think it's because it's just a complete DC run, and also the story behind it is very fascinating. So just for those two reasons alone, we felt it was prudent to give this a collection a name. This is the first time that something of this magnitude has come up for sale.
Now, the very first auction is going to focus on Batman. So what are some of the keys? What are some of the key Batman comics that collectors should be on the lookout for?
Well, they've got obviously the first appearances, the classic covers. You've got the Joker covers. There's many keys in both runs, particularly Detective. You've got the first Riddler. You've got the first Boy Commandos. Of course, many classic Joker covers. Detective 31's a great cover. The first Robin, and of course all the scarcer issues up in the early 50s. So there's a lot of great issues coming up for auction in those runs.
Are you personally grading all of these?
No, we're only grading a select number. It's basically based on value and or grade. So some of them are going to go up for sale raw, obviously the ones that are maybe lower grade or cheaper in value, but all the key issues, the early issues, the rare issues, the high grade issues, those we'll see, those we'll certify.
So I believe you've brought some special books to show me, is that right?
Oh, I got some great ones.
Oh, I can't wait, let's check them out.
So what I've got here is some of the detective comics that we've recently graded, and this is the very early issues up until the Silver Age. And one thing we've noticed so far with grading these is that the early issues are lower grade, some are restored, but I think that's appealing to a lot of collectors because these books are so valuable that this gives them a chance to buy a copy at a more affordable price. They're still going to go for thousands.
Yeah, I was going to say more affordable price.
Nothing's affordable anymore, but some of these books will sell for six figures alone.
Can I even touch these?
Sure.
I know that they're graded already and they're encapsulated, but I'm still nervous to hold these things. I just feel like when I would go into an antique store, my mom would be like, if you break it, you're gonna have to pay for it.
Right, yeah. It's a great thing about the holder. You have to worry about that part.
I can't. I'm just gonna leave it to you.
Yeah. So this is Detective 28. So this is the second appearance of Batman. Came out right out a month after 27. Obviously, Batman's not on the cover. They would put him on every other cover for the first year until he finally was on every cover. And this one's graded a 1.8, and it has some restoration to it, moderate to extensive restoration, but the cover presents really well.
Do you know what about it was restored?
Yeah, there's a color touch pieces added and some tape here on the spine, so you can see a little bit of color touch right here. They didn't quite match it well, so the red's a little bit more apparent than the green here. But the image is really clean. You got a little bit of bug chew down here, but for the second appearance of Batman, this is obviously much more affordable than the first appearance.
Right.
So, yeah.
All right. What do we got next?
Yeah. So next up, we've got the Detective 29. So this came obviously right after 28, the third appearance of Batman, and here he is on the cover on this one. Now, it's a classic cover. It's just great rendering by Bob Kane. Batman obviously flying through the window, first appearance of
Also,
Dr.
no
Death.
gloves.
No gloves, yeah. The character was still in some of an evolutionary stage at this point and would continue for the next few issues. But yeah, this is a big one here. Obviously, with him being on the cover, this has a lot more value than the 28 does. And so this one's graded a 1.0. Like the 28, it has some restoration, color touch pieces added, but still solid copy. Looks great on the front cover. So for a 1.0, it's got really good eye appeal.
Oh, this next one.
Yeah, so this is, now we skip ahead to 33. Now another Batman cover. Now this one's really significant because this is Batman's the first time his origin's been told. So on the first page. So that makes this very historical among the early Batman issues. So because of that and him being on the cover, this is actually even more valuable. And so again, this copy's restored in a 1/5. And again, it sells for 6 figures easily in an unrestored high grade. So this is a great chance to own a copy of this historical book for a lower price. It's still going to be many, many, many thousands of dollars.
Now, here Batman's got a little bit more classic cape. He's got closer to the classic gloves, but he's still got the gun holster right there. Do you remember exactly when he lost the gun?
You know, I think it was, this is 33. Robin came in on number 38. The gun was gone by then. I think he may have had the gun for a few more issues.
Okay.
There's a few panels where he's using it in the stories, but it was, I'm not sure exactly when, but it was dropped pretty quickly. So then here now we jump to the Silver Age, actually the very dawn of the Silver Age. So this is Detective 225, came out in 1955. This is the first appearance of Manhunter from Mars. Now, for a while, this was considered to be the birth of the Silver Age, back in the 90s or up until the 90s. And since then, it's kind of gravitated more to Showcase 4. But this is still a very significant book in comic book history, and particularly in the run of Detective. Obviously, got Batman here on the cover, and Martian Manhunter's in a backup story. So this is unrestored. It's an unrestored 4.0, which is a real solid grade for this book, and it's got great eye appeal. It looks better than a 4.0 here at first glance. So this one should fetch some pretty good money.
All right, next. Oh, I know what this book is.
Yes. So this is Detective 233, just a few months after 225 we just saw. And so this is the first appearance of Batwoman. So again, still many significant characters appearing in this title. She's obviously went on to great popularity, and so here Batman and Robin is pursuing her. And like the 225, this one's an unrestored, slightly lower grade 3.0, but still a very solid grade for this book, and yeah, will fetch a pretty penny.
Well, thank you for showing me all these.
Sure.
If you'll excuse me, I'm going to go sell my house now so I can partake in this auction. That would be great.
Yeah, me too.
Because these books are, some of them 80, 85 years old, do you think that the pedigree collection is going to become more and more rare as time goes on?
I think that it always seems like the last of the great pedigree collections have surfaced. There couldn't possibly be, somebody out there, because everyone knows now that old comic books, there's value to them. So, could there be some granny out there like in Nebraska who's got some great comics in her attic? It's a possibility. I wouldn't count on it, but that said, the Black Cat collection did surface fairly recently, the Promise collection, so these things may still be out there, but I think increasingly we're going to see collectors looking at provenance labels of great collections. So, the actor Nick Cage got a provenance label for his collection. When we sold the Steve Ditko collection, Steve Ditko's own collection of comic books, that again was a provenance label. So that's something I think collectors are looking at more and more. And this collection, I think, is tailor-made for that kind of a designation, because it's just, the story behind it is so great, and it is just complete. Everything you want is here. So anybody who wants a DC comic, there is a chance to get the DC Universe copy. And there's really no other entire category, if a comic published by a publisher, that you can think of, except for EC. You might get the Bill Gaines file copy, and even then, even Bill Gaines didn't have every single EC comic. So
now, you mentioned how this collection will never be rivaled. Nobody will ever be able to amass over 40,000 DC comic books ever again. So, with that being said, have you had a chance to talk to Ian about if he has any regrets about letting such a massive collection go?
That's a really good question, Chris. Yeah, I have. So in the catalog, we actually give Ian 4 pages to tell his own story, and he gets into it. It's kind of a sad story. So, Ian, he wasn't a speculator or an investor. He just loved DC Comics and had a really close personal collection to his beloved characters and the artists that he liked. He read these books and he cherished these books, and you can see not everything is high grade. Ian wanted these books to handle and to read. I mean, these are it's a living collection. It wasn't meant to be kind of just put aside someplace. What happened is, DC did their New 52 kind of reboot, and they started renumbering all of their legacy titles. So, Action Comics gets canceled with issue number whatever it was and started off with number 1, and same thing with Batman and Detective. And Ian was just heartbroken by this. He felt like it interrupted the continuity of DC Comics, interrupted the continuity of his own collection. And somehow, he felt betrayed by it. I can understand that. So he decided that was a good jumping off point for him. He was going to stop. He felt like EC or DC, as he said, took a crap all over his collection, is how he put it. And he just didn't want to have any part of it. So, I admire the passion of that, and that's how he felt. And I guess then you could say, well, gee, if that's the case, why does this collection go through 2014? Well, because after he decided to sell the collection, and he partnered up with our consignor to do so, the idea was that it'll be more attractive to a buyer if it's current through to the date when, it came to market, which was 2014. So, hence they filled in the gaps, and that was another massive undertaking in its own right, just to fill in 10 years of back issues. But that's been done, so it's all here.
The very first Batman auction is coming up in November, so walk me through a couple of the highlights of that auction.
Okay, so of course we've got Detective Comics number 27, the first appearance of Batman, 1939. That's a very significant book. Really, it needs no introduction, but I think we may want to kind of bask in the glow of this book a little longer there. It's a wonderful, wonderful book. And we've got Detective Comics number 29 here, and really it's a question of what to show. I mean, they're all here, and any one of these books, there's so much that could be said about it. They're just fantastic. But this is the second cover appearance of Batman. And you can say, well, why wasn't he in the cover of number 28? Well, nobody knew that Batman was going to be a big hit. DC tried a lot of characters, Crimson Avenger, people like that, trying to replicate the success of Superman, and just nothing clicked. In hindsight, well, of course, Batman, but at the time, who knew that Batman was going to become a legend? DC didn't, so for the next issue, they hedged their bet and put something else in the cover.
This is actually one of my favorite Batman covers. I feel like this is the first cover that really evokes who Batman is.
Right. No, this goes right to the heart of Batman. It's a great cover. It's a tremendous accomplishment by Bob Kane. And Bob Kane's a controversial figure in his own right. People have lots of things to say about him and his contributions versus, say, Bill Fingers or Dick Sprang's or Jerry Robinson's. But I'll tell you, this cover is pure Kane. Not pure, because it's inked, I think, by Shelley Moldoff, who brought a lot to bear also. But it's just the iconography here. I mean, it's all there. Like you say, it's quintessentially Batman. It's here he is, a looming figure, kind of, the mad monk here in the mountains, the moon. It's a wonderful, wonderful thing. So we use that as a cover image for our catalog. Here we've got Detective Comics number 33, which is the origin of Batman. And here for the first time his legend was told and really set the stage for decades of adventures to come. Here we have the first appearance of Robin the Boy Wonder, Detective number 38. Great comic book. And with the addition of Robin, sales jumped overnight. So Batman went from being a very interesting and successful character to being a rival to Superman, because, kids suddenly had a proxy with whom they could identify and kind of insert themselves into the action. Batman lightened his tone somewhat. There are some people who miss the brooding, dark Avenger of Gotham City, but, I think the kids of the day really needed something that was a little friendlier, and kind of Robin gave Batman a friendlier face. So that's a very significant and key issue. Here we've got Detective number 58, which is the first cover appearance of the Joker. Now, the Joker was originally going to appear in this comic book for the first time. Powers that be decided to kind of, shunt his first appearance off into Batman number 1 that appeared roughly contemporaneously with this book.
Also, I couldn't help but notice that the back has the Red Ryder BB action.
Oh yeah, that's a great one there, and you see that sometimes. As anybody who's seen the Christmas Story movie knows it well. yeah, and I'm sure lots of kids did. Here we have Detective number 66, and what's going on here? This is the first appearance of, it's a first Two-Face. So this is a great one. And then we've got all the first appearances here. We've got the first Catwoman, the first Joker, which are, of course, in this comic book. Batman number 1, 1940. This book just hits on all cylinders. I mean, you've got Batman, you got Robin, you got the Joker, first appearance, 2 stories, you got Catwoman, first called The Cat. You've got this wonderful pinup on the back cover there. And there's just something about the presentation here. You look at this cover, you look at the cover of Superman number 1, and it almost seems as if, DC was kind of somehow marketing it towards this incipient brand of kids who collect it. It has the look of a collector's item, even though back then that just wasn't the mentality. But, it's just an instantly iconic image there. Really fantastic.
Now, out of all of these Batman comics, which one is your personal favorite?
Boy, that's hard to say, and it's hard to play favorites, But I have a very strong connection to Detective Comics number 27. So, when I was a kid, my dad was one of the first generation of comic book fans. He loved them. Funny books, he called them. And, he saw the first Action comics on the newsstands when he was 5 years old, little kid in Texas. Didn't buy it. Back then, Great Depression, kids didn't always have a dime, but it made a real impression on his psyche. So, years later, he grows up, gives up comics, goes to law school. And then when I was a kid and he was practicing law, one of his clients was Gary Arlington, who ran the first comic shop, west of the Mississippi, the San Francisco Comic Book Company. And Gary and my dad became friends. My dad would give Gary legal advice, help him out. And Gary would always send my dad home laden with armloads of comic books, everything from Robert Crumb to Batman, Spider-Man, you name it. So I grew up reading these things. And one of the books my dad brought home was the famous first edition's reprint of Detective Comics number 27, which was more or less an identical reprint of, except in larger format. And I just pored over that thing. I mean, Chris, I must have read it a million times now as a kid, just obsessively memorizing the ads and everything. So to actually have here and handle and see that comic book, it's an experience that's hard. I think any true collector and true fan knows what I'm talking about.
I understand. I mean, just being surrounded around all of these books that I'll never be able to afford is it's slightly overwhelming.
There's a real golden glow to the whole thing.
Yeah.
There really is.